Between 1633 and 1651, a woman in Rome sold poison to over 600 women. The poison was colorless, odorless, tasteless. It killed slowly enough to look like illness. And when she was finally caught, the Pope ordered the torture of every woman in Rome until someone talked. What they revealed changed the history of crime forever. Welcome to Vial of Europa. Rome, 1659. A woman was dragged through the streets. She had been tortured. She had confessed. And what she confessed was so extraordinary that the Pope himself ordered every church in Rome to ring its bells, to warn the city that something terrible had been among them for 20 years. Her name was Giulia Tofana, and she had built, in plain sight, in the middle of Rome, the most successful murder operation in the history of the city. Not a secret society, not a criminal gang, a perfume shop that sold, alongside its legitimate wares, a small bottle marketed as a cosmetic, sometimes as a devotional oil, sometimes labeled with the face of a saint, called Aqua Tofana, for drops in a glass of water, and a husband would fall ill, 6 drops, and he would not recover, 10 drops, and the physicians would shake their heads, and write natural causes, and the widow would inherit. 600 husbands died this way over 20 years, in a city that did not know, could not know, until a tortured woman, in 1659, finally told them everything. But to understand Giulia Tofana, you must first understand the world her customers lived in, because these 600 women were not simply murderers. They were women with no other option, and the world that produced them was darker than anything Giulia put in her bottles. Italy in the 17th century was a world of extraordinary beauty and extraordinary cruelty. For women, marriage was not a choice. It was an economic transaction. A woman's father negotiated with a man's family. A price was agreed. A contract was signed. And a woman, sometimes as young as 12 or 13, was handed from one household to another, from her father's control to her husband's. She owned nothing, not her dowry, not her children, not her own body. Under the legal systems of 17th century Italy, a husband had almost unlimited authority over his wife. He could beat her, legally, as long as he did not kill her. Though even that was difficult to prosecute. He could confine her, control who she spoke to, prevent her from leaving the house, control what she wore, what she ate, who she saw. And if he died, if the husband died, the woman did not simply become free. The property passed to his family. The children passed to his family. The widow received only what the marriage contract had specified, which was rarely enough, and which was controlled by men. Divorce was effectively impossible. The Catholic Church did not permit it. An annulment required years of legal proceedings, enormous expense, and the cooperation of church authorities who were overwhelmingly male and overwhelmingly reluctant. So what could a woman do if her husband beat her? If her husband threatened her life? If her husband gambled away everything? If her husband was violent to her children? If her husband had given her a disease from his other women? If her husband was simply destroying her life? Day by day by day, she could pray, she could endure, or she could visit a perfume shop in Rome and speak to a woman named Giulia Tofana, who understood, who had seen, who had, perhaps, been in exactly the same position herself, and who had spent years perfecting a solution. Giulia Tofana was not the first. Her mother, Dolfenia d'Adamo, had been executed in Palermo in 1633, also for poisoning, also for selling poison to women, to solve problems that the law would not solve for them. Giulia had watched her mother die, and had learned 2 lessons. The first was chemistry. The second was discretion. She would not make her mother's mistakes. She moved to Rome. She opened a shop. She built a network. And she began. Because what Giulia Tofana created was not simply a poison. It was a system, a network so carefully designed that it operated for nearly 20 years before anyone in authority understood what was happening. And understanding how she built it reveals something extraordinary about the intelligence of the woman at its center. Aqua Tofana, the water Tofana, was a masterpiece of 17th century chemistry. Its exact composition has never been fully confirmed, but analysis of contemporary accounts and the confession testimonies suggests 3 primary ingredients: arsenic trioxide, the king of poisons, colorless, odorless, soluble in water, tasteless at low concentrations, and at the doses Giulia recommended, almost completely undetectable. Lead, which enhanced the arsenic's effects, slowing the kidney and liver damage, extending the dying process to look exactly like natural illness, and belladonna, deadly nightshade, which added to the symptoms of natural illness, dilated pupils, confusion, rapid heartbeat, all symptoms a 17th century physician would attribute to fever, to bad air, to God's will. The genius of Aqua Tofana was not just what it contained, it was how it worked over time. A standard dose was administered in 4 to 6 drops, in water, in wine, in soup, mixed into anything. The husband would fall ill. Within a week, fatigue, stomach pain. The physician would be called, would find nothing specific, would prescribe rest. A second dose, more fatigue, hair beginning to thin. The physician would return, would suspect perhaps a digestive ailment. A third dose, weakness severe enough that the husband could not leave his bed. By the time of the 4th dose, the body's organs were failing, and the physician would write natural causes, and the widow would grieve appropriately. The network Giulia built to distribute this product was equally sophisticated. She did not simply sell from her shop. That would have been too obvious, too easily traced. Instead, she worked through intermediaries. A woman named Girolama Spera, who ran a separate operation, who brought customers to Giulia and took Giulia's product to customers, creating distance between the poison and the poisoner. The product was disguised, sometimes as a face powder, sometimes as a perfume oil, sometimes in bottles labeled with images of saints, specifically San Nicola di Bari, a saint whose cult was associated with miraculous healing. The bottles were small, innocuous, the kind of thing a woman might carry in her household, might display on a shelf, without anyone asking questions. Giulia's customers were carefully selected. She did not sell to everyone who came asking. She was not a criminal. She was, in her own understanding, and in the understanding of many of the women she served, a solution to problems that had no other solution. She asked questions about the husband, about the marriage, about the children. She needed to know, not for moral reasons, but for practical ones. A customer who talked too much, who seemed unstable, who might confess under pressure, was a risk. And Giulia Tofana, after watching her mother die, did not take risks she did not need to take. For nearly 20 years, the system worked. Husbands died. Physicians wrote natural causes. Widows inherited. And Giulia Tofana continued operating in plain sight until one husband did not die, and one wife panicked and said exactly the wrong thing to exactly the wrong person. The exact details of how Giulia Tofana was exposed are disputed. Different sources give different versions, but the most commonly accepted account goes like this. Sometime around 1651, a woman who had purchased Aqua Tofana and had begun administering it to her husband had a crisis of conscience. Her husband, ill and suspicious, demanded to know what was in the soup, why the soup tasted strange, and the woman, frightened, confessed, not to the authorities. She confessed to her husband, which was in some ways worse, because he went directly to the authorities, and the investigation that followed was not a gentle one. Pope Innocent X was informed, a man who governed Rome with an iron hand, who regarded the idea that women had been systematically murdering their husbands right under his nose for 20 years as not merely criminal, but as a direct attack on the divine order of things. He ordered the arrest of everyone connected to Giulia Tofana. He ordered the torture of those arrested. He issued an extraordinary decree that any woman at all, who had purchased anything from Giulia Tofana or from her associates should come forward and confess, voluntarily, under promise of reduced punishment, he gave them 1 week. The number of women who came forward was extraordinary, and their testimonies were more extraordinary still. They described husbands who beat them, husbands who had threatened to kill them, husbands who had given them diseases, husbands who had destroyed their families, husbands who had driven them to the shop of Giulia Tofana, not out of greed, not out of ambition, but out of desperation, out of survival. Giulia herself had fled. When she understood the investigation had begun, she took refuge in a convent where, under normal circumstances, secular authorities could not touch her. The Pope overruled the sanctuary, an almost unprecedented act, violating the sacred protection of the Church, to extract the woman inside. She was taken, she was tortured, she confessed, to the production and distribution of Aqua Tofana, to the training of Girolamo Spera and other associates, to the approximate number of customers, to the approximate number of husbands who had died. The number was approximately 600, over approximately 20 years. In one city, the interrogators were so shocked that they made her repeat it 3 times. 600, 600, 600. 600 husbands in one city, over 20 years. The authorities expected to find a monster. What they found instead was a network of ordinary women. And what those women said in their testimonies about their marriages, about their lives, about why they came to Giulia Tofana, is the most disturbing part of the entire story. The testimonies gathered during the investigation have survived in partial form, in Vatican archives, in court records, and what they reveal is not a portrait of calculated murderers. It is a portrait of society that had failed its women so completely that 600 of them, in a single city, had decided that poison was a more reliable solution than the law. The testimonies describe a pattern, almost identical across hundreds of cases. A woman married young, often to a man she had not chosen, often to a man significantly older. The marriage was violent, or financially ruinous, or both. The woman attempted legal recourse, and found none. The woman attempted to leave, and found that impossible. The woman prayed for years, and her prayers were not answered. And then, someone told her about Giulia. Word of mouth, between women, always between women, never written down, never spoken in public. The network of Giulia Tofana spread through the women of Rome, like a secret, like a lifeline, like the only door, in a room with no windows. One testimony describes a woman who had been beaten so severely that she had lost hearing in one ear, who had been to the church authorities twice and been told each time that her suffering was God's will, that patience was a virtue, that her husband was the head of the household, and that she should go home. She wanted Giulia instead. Another testimony describes a woman whose husband had given her syphilis from his relationship with another woman who was now dying, slowly, painfully, while her husband continued his life, entirely unbothered. Another, a woman whose husband had gambled away everything, including the dowry her family had given, including the house, including the money set aside for their children, who had come to Giulia, not from anger, but from arithmetic, because she had calculated that her children had a better chance of survival with him dead than with him alive. The interrogators who took these testimonies were not sympathetic. They were not interested in the stories of the marriages. They were interested in the names, the dates, the doses, the evidence. But the testimonies exist, and historians who have read them have consistently noted the same thing. These were not women who wanted to murder. These were women who wanted to survive, and who had found, in Giulia Tofana, the only person in Rome who was willing to help them do it. And then came the executions. And what happened to Giulia Tofana, and to the women who had used her poison, and to the women who had simply known about it, reveals the final dark truth of this story, because the justice that Rome delivered was not blind, and it was not equal, and it was not really about justice at all. Giulia Tofana was executed in Rome in 1659, along with her daughter Girolamo and several of her closest associates. The method of execution was strangulation, followed by the throwing of the bodies into the convent of Santa Lucia, from which she had been so dramatically extracted, a final statement from the authorities that no sanctuary would protect what she had done. Of the 600 women whose testimonies or whose names appeared in the investigation, the vast majority were never prosecuted. Some were prosecuted, some were imprisoned, some were executed, but the numbers do not reflect 600 cases, because prosecuting 600 women for the murder of their husbands would have required acknowledging what the testimonies said about the marriages, about the beatings, about the failures of church and law to protect the women inside those marriages. And that acknowledgement was not something Pope Innocent X or his successors were willing to make. So Giulia Tofana was executed as a monster, as a poisoner, as a criminal, and the 600 cases were quietly, mostly, closed. The story of Giulia Tofana did not end with her death. Her poison continued to be produced and sold in Italy under her name for decades after her execution. The demand did not stop because the marriages did not stop, because the legal system did not change, because the church did not change, because the conditions that had driven 600 women to a perfume shop in Rome continued for generations. What Giulia Tofana built was not a criminal enterprise. Though it was criminal, it was a response to a world that had decided women's suffering was acceptable, was natural, was God's will. She decided differently, and 600 women who had exhausted every other option agreed with her. History called her a monster. Some historians have called her something else. The first systematic provider of what we would now call exit services for women in violent marriages, with no other exit. Whether you agree with that framing or find it deeply uncomfortable, the question it poses is the one that has no clean answer. When the law will not protect you, and the church will not protect you, and there is no one, what do you do? Giulia Tofana was executed in 1659. She was approximately 50 years old. She had watched her mother die for the same crime. She had built a system more sophisticated than anything her mother attempted. She had served 600 women over 20 years, in plain sight, in a perfume shop, in Rome. History remembers her as a poisoner, as a criminal, as a monster. The 600 women she served remember her differently, if they remember her at all. The question she leaves behind is not about poison. It is about what happens when every legal option is closed, when every door is locked, when every authority says, endure. Subscribe to Veil of Europa. Every week, we find a history that refuses to be simple. We'll see you in the shadows